delve into, and everyone can hear, right? Can hear well? Okay. So the very first thing I want to talk about is the fact that this question is actually a theological question. How can God do something that's bad? Well, that's belief in some way that God exists, right? Otherwise, you can't ask that question. If everything's random, if my life is random, if the world is random, the cells are random, there's natural selection, which everyone's very happy about right now, saying that, oh, natural selection, the old are going to die, which is a ridiculous statement. So if, sorry, but at the end of the day, it's a theological question. How can a disaster happen and how can God let bad happen in a way is a theological question. If there's no God and everything's random and everything good that comes your way is okay, and suddenly something bad that comes your way isn't, well, it happened because it naturally happened. So that's the very first idea that a person needs to understand, is that if you're asking this question, you truly believe deep down that God exists, or you have no right to ask the question. If an atheist cannot ask the question, how can God let bad happen? I'm going to change that statement there. Bad. Okay, not disaster, but just bad in general, because there's a reason for that. I want to get into disasters too. But the very first point to make is that this is a theological question. God doesn't exist, then my existence is random. The fact that my existence is the one that won, right? My sperm cell is the one that made it, and everything else didn't, is all random. It's just me being lucky. So my existence is lucky, and my health is lucky. My heart pumping till now is lucky. And suddenly something bad happens. Well, that's just bad luck. Somebody got sick and somebody didn't. That's just bad luck. And the second point to make is that this is a very good question to ask, actually. Meaning, if you're a religious person, it's actually considered as a good question. How do I know that? Well, all the Jewish leaders throughout history asked this question. Actually, they grappled with this question. What is it, Dan? Grappled. So they grappled with this question more than any other question in itself. And that is pointed out by Rabbeinu Bechaye, one of the earlier writers, who wrote a book called Chovot HaLevavot, The Duty of the Hearts. And in that book, he brings up all the prophets and everybody that asks, how can it be that bad people suffer, that good people suffer? David asked the question. Abraham asked the question. B'ma edah. God says, hey, your children are going to be the people that are going to carry the word of God. So, they're going to go through Egypt. Abraham says, how will I know? How will I know it's worth it? As some explain. How do I know that if I'm going to do what's good, I'm going to gain? Maybe I shouldn't bother with this whole good moral thing, because how do I know I'm going to gain? Moses asked the question. Jacob was called Yisrael, which means to struggle with God. Moses asked the question because he said, Hareni nat kvodecha. He says to God, show me your way. I want to know how you work. And the Talmud explains, he wasn't just asking God to show him his way. He was asking, listen, I have one question. Why is it that bad people prosper and good people suffer? So there you go. Moses himself asked the question himself. And actually, God's answer was very interesting, which is one of the ultimate answers, which is, Lo yir'eni ha'adam v'chai. A person must not see me and live. It's not possible for a person to see me, meaning to know my full ways and live. So we're going to talk about that. What does it mean to see me and live? But the ultimate point here is, I said ultimate many times, but that's okay, right? The real point here is to say, or to understand at least, is that this is the only good question, or at least the only legitimate question in Judaism. There's many questions that we ask and we should ask and we try to understand, but this is really a question that is a real theological good question. All the other questions can be answered. Why is the sky blue? Why is this that way? Why is that way? Because Hashem wanted it for our good or whatever it is, right? Everything could be explained. The atheist needs to explain everything else. We have everything else explained. Why the world is round? How do I know it's, how do I know cells? How do I know how it works? They need to explain everything. We also like to explain everything. We don't have to. We want to explain everything, but we don't have to. So the only question that we really deal with is the question of why does bad happen? And we need to answer that question. Now, the number two, the second point here is, and I'm going to stop sharing my screen because it's annoying me. So I'm going to just stop sharing that screen. Okay. So the second point is that who is me? Who is asking the question, right? Who am I? And who is God? And when you are asking, how can such a disaster happen in this world? Who am I and who is God? Am I an infinite being? Am I an all-loving being? Am I an all-powerful being? I'm just a little piece in a puzzle that lives for a very short amount of time. Okay, maybe 60, 70. Maybe 70 years, says David. If I'm strong, maybe 80. I keep quoting this statement of Psalms, which is so true and so evident. If at the end of the day, we are only a short part of a puzzle. So if there's an all infinite being and an all loving being, an all powerful being, how do I know that God is all loving, all powerful, and infinite? Well, at the end of the day, I need to also understand that this world that we live in, right? So just like when I see something, I see a chair, I see a table, I see a piano. The more complex it is, the more obvious to me that someone made that thing. And they made it for a reason. No one made shirts just that they should be shirts. There's a shirt for a reason. It may be that I don't understand the reason of the shirt, but it's definitely there for a reason. So Judaism understands that everything has a creator. This entire existence that we're in has something that created it. And what is that? A creator. Now that creator can't be like me and you, because then you have a question: who created that thing? Who created that being? If it's like me and you, what came before it? How is that involved in every single cell? How's that involved in? And by the way, Judaism today is so much more in tune with this theology than so much more in tune with science than any other religion is, because we always believe that it's an infinite being. There's no human intervention, and it's an infinite being that is what created the world. En lo guf ve'en lo demut haguf. He has no body nor a figure of a body, and the creator of this entire universe is an infinite being that's involved in everybody. Now that is very, very in tune with science. Everything else is very questionable, because the minute you add a human intervention into Hashem, so then you have a big question. How can you're adding a human intervention? How can he be involved in my birth, in the birth of me? How can he be involved in me being happy? How can he be involved in me being sick? So we have to understand that Jewish understanding is that it's a Yud, Hey, Vav, and Hey, which means a was, is, and will be. The creator of the universe, the creator of me, is also the creator of you. And it's a one infinite being. That infinite being doesn't need me and you. It doesn't need anything. In fact, everything that exists could all stop existing in a second. And that infinite being is all powerful, all loving, and all being. So how do I know it's all loving? Because if it's infinite, if this being is infinite, then it doesn't need anything. An infinite being doesn't need anything. Okay, nothing was created before it. Nothing had to have been created before it. And an infinite being doesn't need me, doesn't need you, it doesn't need anything. Once I know that it doesn't need anything, So what is it creating me for? And the answer is to give to me. That's the only reason of its existence. I'm not going to go too much into the theology of, or the idea of how Hashem, what is God and what we believe in Hashem. But the idea, we have to understand when somebody asks you, how can bad things happen in this world? The question we need to ask, or how can God bring bad things to this world? We have to ask, who is you that's asking the question? Who is God? You see, we don't live throughout time. Let's say something goes wrong for you. Okay, let's say something goes wrong for me. I only know now. I don't know what's the result of that going wrong. Let me give you an example. Okay, so somebody gets thrown out of his job. And by the way, this is to strengthen, even if you've heard this before, but it strengthen our emunah, strengthen our faith. This is something that can never be, every time I work on this stuff, I strengthen my own faith. So let's say somebody loses a job, okay? And he's really upset, doesn't know how he's going to make his money. He's managing on a very small budget. At least, thank God, his parents are helping him, because no one's really, no one's really in a really bad situation. We always have family and relatives that can help us, almost always. So let's say the guy's lost the job or she's lost the job, and you're really upset. Right now, is that called suffering? Is that bad? Anyone? Is that bad or good? Bad or good? Lost your job?
Bad.
Okay. Just seeing that everyone's there. At least Dan's here. So if you lose your job,
I would love to play Jeopardy against these people.
Okay. So if I
muted right now.
Oh, okay. That's true. That's true. Thank you, Dana. But if something doesn't go my way, right now I lose my job. That's bad. Right now I see bad. That's all I see. But that's only because who's the one who's suffering is limited me, who only knows now. I do not know tomorrow. I won't know what's going to be in a week. But let's say after a week of not having the job, I have a friend who says, listen, I have another job available for you. And it's actually, instead of you having to commute and go far away for your job, it's going to be local. Ooh, a new offering. Most likely you'll get the job. You have to be at the meeting. There's going to be a meeting on Tuesday at 10 o'clock. And you wake up in the morning and somehow you miss your alarm clock. Okay, so when you find out that you're getting a new job and you've got a prospect for a new job, is that good? Yes, that's good. So suddenly things change. Then you start making your way to the job, and guess what happens? Terrible. You're all excited. You woke up late. That's bad. But then you thought you're going to take the bus. You managed to get a friend. You got an Uber. You worked it out. Okay, so then you had a bad moment. You see how much drama is going on? Good, bad, good. You start making your way to your interview on Tuesday morning at 10. And on your way, God forbid, on somebody's way, God forbid, there's an accident. Terrible accident. Right? How bad nothing can get worse. That's it. The worst. I lost the job, got a new prospect, got all excited, and now it got taken away from me again. How are you going to feel now? You're going to say again, that's bad. But then you get to the hospital, and somebody has a serious accident, God forbid, gets to the hospital, they have to have an operation. They do the operation, and everything's fine. But whilst they're doing the operation, they also find a growth that's inside that person's body. And they say, you know what, we're going to have to do immediate surgery. Thank goodness for this mistake, what happened. We're going to have to do immediate surgery. And they are doing the surgery already, but they have to take it to a whole new level and spend another 2-3 hours saving this person's life from a much worse and severe problem. So there goes a small example of moments of drama of, oh no, what's going to be? Then it's much better because now I can actually work locally. Then suddenly there's a crash. Oh no, what's going to be? The person ends up in hospital. Once he gets into hospital, oh no, what's going to be? They do an operation on him because he hurt himself, and then they find that he's got another growth, and they save him from that growth. That's just an example of good and bad, because we do not see the whole picture. Rabbi Klatzko, who's a very close friend of mine, I tuned in the other day because he was also talking about this. I tuned in and he gave a really cool example. He said, let's say you have in front of you, we all know today that Hitler was a very bad man, right? Killed millions of people. Agree? Everyone agree? Hitler was bad. So let's say if you could go back in time, okay? Somebody here can go back in time. Dana, you can go back in time. So you go back in time and you see, excuse me for even giving this example, but this is a reality. So you see Hitler as a baby, okay? You're able to go back in time. Everybody that's in front of you, right, would think of you as crazy if you would consider killing baby Hitler. But is that a bad thing? Well, I don't know. It's not the discussion right here. But at the end of the day, afterwards, when we know what that person's done, 70 years later, when we know what that person's done, and we look back and we say to ourselves, okay, wait a second. If I would have known that that person would have grown to be who he was, I definitely would have pulled his plug. Definitely would have done it. But all the people at that time, when there's baby Hitler around, everyone's looking at it and saying, you are crazy for even considering this. So that's exactly the idea. When I see something that's bad, it's only because I'm living in the moment. I don't see the greater scale of the thing. I don't see the greater picture. The picture that I need to see is that who's asking the question of why is there bad? And who's the one who's actually causing what appears to be bad for me? That is a very important idea. Does everyone get that? So, yeah, everyone get that?
Yeah.
Okay, so point number 2 is who's the one that's asking the question? And who's the one that's actually causing what you think is bad? Okay, and it's an infinite being, it's an all-loving being, and it's an all-powerful being. How do I know that God is infinite, all-powerful, and all-loving? That's another whole discussion, but I basically just laid it out for you. I basically told you that everything has a creator, and that creator can't be like me and you, because if that creator is like me and you, then who created that thing? And also, how can it be like me and you if it's involved in everything in the world? And the idea also has to be, if he's infinite, which is the answer, that he's not just a single finite being, but it's an infinite being. An infinite being can't need me and you. So why did it create me and you? Why did it create this entire world? And the answer is to give its own goodness, because there is no other goodness besides for the infinite being's goodness. So it created all of us because he's all loving. An infinite being doesn't take in any way, doesn't need to take. Taking by definition is how do you say it? It's the opposite of what God is. It's the exact opposite of what God is. God, by definition, can only give. What's it, Dan? Antithesis of what God is. Okay, so so that's really the idea. So that's number 2. Number 3, yes. Anyone there? Question? Thoughts? Okay. So point number 3 is like this, and I'm going to show you my screen again because I think that's important. Okay. Point number 3 is free will versus clarity. So I've mentioned this before, and the idea is that if I was able to, so what I told you till now was we don't have the ability, because we're human, to see beyond the entire picture. We're only living in the moment. So a person might ask me, okay, fine. Why can't God allow me to see the entire picture? It's true that I'm suffering right now. If I lose a job, I'm suffering right now and I don't understand it. But at least let God give me the entire picture. That in itself is a suffering. And the answer to that is free will. If I would always know the answer to everything and the reason of everything, then I will have no free will to become human. In fact, I will not be human. And that's the exact answer that God gave Moses. Moses says, show me, God, your way. And Moses had a very close connection to Hashem. In fact, it tells us that Moses spoke face to face, a prophecy that no other prophet can get to. So he was on the highest level of prophecy, and yet he still asked this question. What was he asking? Why is it the righteous sometimes suffer in this world and evil prosper? And what was the answer? Lo yir'eni ha'adam v'chai. A human being can't see me and live. Meaning, because if you do see me, if you do come out of the world of time, if you leave the space of time, and time is dependent on a finite reality, this world that we live in is finite, and it depends. That's what gives us time, and that's proven by Einstein and so on. Science today agrees with the fact that space and matter affects time. If you remove yourself from space and matter, depending on what type of space and matter you're in, time will be defined differently. And so God is beyond time. And if he's beyond time, so if I leave that world, then I won't be human anymore. If I leave the world of being in this physical space that I'm in, I will not anymore be allowed to be a human. And here goes the great point. Free will versus clarity. Free will versus clarity. Okay? So the idea is, and I always use this example, if you have a huge fire, I've got a nice fireplace right here, which I'm not allowed to use by the owner of this house. It's one of the rules. You can't use the fireplace. I wonder why. But anyway, if I put my hand into a fire that's burning, how clear is it to everybody in this chat that I'll burn my hand? From 1 to 10, if I put my hand in a fire, how clear is it to me that I'll burn my hand? Anyone know?
10.
Right? It's 10. Exactly. So if I know for sure that I will burn my hand by putting my hand in the fire, what are the chances of me actually doing it?
0.
0. Now, some people will come to me, yeah, Rabbi, I'll do it. It's true that you still have the choice to do it, but your free will has been very much narrowed to a almost inexistent place. Okay? It's true you have still the ability, but your freedom of a bit of choice has been very constrained. You're almost like you're locked into a system which says do or not. Okay? So here's the idea. If I know for sure if that when I steal money, immediately in my bank account, I lose $10,000. And if I know for sure when I give charity, immediately in my bank account, I get $20,000. The righteous immediately see the reward of their righteous act, and the evil see the punishment of their evil act. And I see a just world. If I was in a world like that, then will there be a choice to steal? Will there be a choice to give charity? There will, but a very limited choice, okay? If I was in a world where I understood exactly the reason of why this epidemic is happening, we all understood the reason of this pandemic. We all know God's plan. And every person that's losing their job, we know exactly the reason. No one can know the reason, by the way. No rabbi could tell you the reason. So if I knew the reason, would there be any understanding of why? Would there be any need for me to exist? I'm just a robot. I'm literally just a robot. Everything that happens to me, I understand. Everything that doesn't happen to me, I don't understand. That's just a living robot. Does that make sense to everyone or not really?
Yeah.
Yes.
The more clarity I have with something, the more clarity I have with what is good and what is bad for me, then the less choice I have to do the good or bad. The less clarity I have, the more choice I have. I can't have too little clarity because then I will be completely lost and no one can claim anything of me. I'll be like just a loose cannon. I need to have some kind of direction, okay? And that's why there are things that always put us in check. You know, we have our parents that guide us and our society that guides us. So there are certain things that keep us, and there's certain coincidences that we think are coincidences that push us on the right track. You know, when I was 16, I was a mischievous child, but there was certain moments in my life where I went through 3 or 4 moments in my life where I had a near-death experience. And I don't mean like I left my body and I went into another world, but none of that, but I almost died a number of times. Okay. And I found that at those moments woke me up. Now, why would God, according to me, do such a thing? I believe to wake me up. Now, that's in some ways, that's not giving me free will. Oh, suddenly God works in a way that wakes me up. That's not giving me free will. He works. It's true that sometimes I need to be directed, because if I'm just too loose and I go everywhere I want to and I just lose myself, I need that direction once in a while. The fact that humans need to work is what directs us to do the right thing. If we were just able to have unlimited money, all of us, and we were all able to just freely run around this world, I believe that humans would be not everyone who doesn't have it wouldn't be able to deal with it. We would be lost. And for that reason, certain things don't go our way to keep us in check, but we still have free will. If we were in a state where we literally saw God's plan always, when somebody loses his job, he knows that next week it's actually going to be for his better. And exactly next week, he's going to have another opportunity that's coming his way. And then after that, he's going to get into that job and it's not going to work out after a year, but that's good because it's going to be for something. If I know the plan for my life, then I'm not a human. So that is the second thing, or the third point that I made, which is that we need to know that if I have too much clarity in this world of all the past, present, and future, if I'm like God, then I am not human anymore. There will be no desire to do good out of free will. The only reason why I do good is because if I do good, I see the rewards of my good. Okay? So that's another answer to why we can't always understand the answer to why bad things happen. We do believe that bad things happen for a good reason as Jews, but we can't always understand them. Okay? So that's number 3. Number 4, and I'm going to switch them over, 4 and 5, but number 4 is to make me grow. Okay? I need it to make me grow. Now, this is a belief that's brought down in the Talmud, and I'll show you the Talmud itself. But it's there to make me grow. Okay? What does that mean? Well, if I'm in a world where I just get whatever I want, like a child, never has to have any effort into getting what he wants. Whenever he asks for food, he gets it spoon-fed into him, no effort at all. Because, by the way, suffering is also getting up and sitting down. Suffering could be walking around in this world, like suffering could be anything. Going on a jog could be suffering for some. So if I have to myself get up and work instead of having everything spoon-fed to me and everything going perfectly the way I want, then I will never become the great person that I am today. And that's a fact. And we need to look at it like that. According to Judaism, when God created the world, everything he saw was good. It says he saw that it was good. Day one, he saw, right? He saw that it was good. What does it mean he saw that it was good? He saw throughout time that it is for the good. And that's a belief we have to have, kind of connected to what we said earlier, that really I don't see the whole picture. But we also have to understand that it's part of the picture is that it's to make me grow. Just like when you go to the gym, you work out and you see the person's in pain and he's struggling and you're like, why are you doing this? And the guy says, well, you see this great six-pack here? You want it? No. Right? But if somebody says yes, so he'll say, well, if you want it, what you need to do is you need to work hard. How do you work hard? Well, you need to stretch. You need to do your running. You need to be in good shape. And you need to lift heavy weights. All of that takes effort. So in the way that this world works is that in order to grow, you need effort. And effort is not bad. Okay? Pain is considered in this world today as bad, but it's not always bad. We need pain for our growth. We need pain to help a mother give birth. You know that if they give too much epidural during birth and the mother is not able to feel at all, that could actually be not good for the birth, because the mother doesn't know when to push the pressure of the birth. They always try and hold back from giving too much epidural from the birth so that the mother can actually feel some kind of pain to help give the birth. By the way, according to Judaism, people have asked me that before. Are we against us having epidural? Everyone knows what that is, right? So are we against that? And of course we're not, because thank God, our generation that we're in has a tool that helps us. We are not strong like we used to be as a people. And we have these scientific advancement, and we want to make life easier for us. It's not like we don't want to make life easier for us. But at the end of the day, when it does come our way, we have to see it as a form of growth. And that's why if you listen to any of the Jewish teachers, the rabbis teaching, they will all emphasize this point of, let's look at the situation right now and say, how can we grow from it? Most of the rabbis are saying you should be spending time with your family. We're always on the run. And I really feel it, because I'm now, my mindset is focusing on looking at the good of this situation, how I can grow from this situation. Because I'm like that, I'm actually realizing that I'm absorbing the fact that I'm enjoying my kids. I'm really getting to know Abraham. I'm telling you, I didn't know him. It's amazing. But the fact that he's home and I'm with him all the time, from morning to night, I'm really getting to know my kids. So you have to look at a difficult situation as a tool for growth. That is not always easy. In fact, many times it could be impossible. For instance, a separate discussion will be somebody saying, well, Rabbi, it's all great, but what about the Holocaust? Okay, so that is a different discussion. But in general, a person needs to look at his situation as a form of growth. And if you do, you will grow from it. But if you don't look at it as a growth, you won't. The greatest example is Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, the one that wrote the Zohar, the greatest books of his teacher, Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, I think, his teacher was much greater than him before he got chased away into the cave. He was in a cave for 12 years, hidden. And he had no clothes. He had just a small tree, which gave him a cherub tree, charuv, and he had a water that was coming his way, a stream of water that was coming his way. All he had was a tiny bit of food, some water, and he would cover himself in the earth to stay warm and to be covered. And that's how he would study Torah for hours on end, study Torah. So by the time he finished those 12 years, him and his son, when they left, he was much greater than his teacher. And when his students saw him, they saw all of his cracked skin, that he was stuck in the earth for so long, this cracked skin everywhere. They said, Rebbe, oy lanu sherainu bekach. Woe to us that we see you like this. How terrible it is that we have to see our teacher, our great teacher, in such a difficult 12 years of being stuck in a cave, hidden from the Romans that were trying to kill him. And he says to them, no. Thank God you see me like this. All my cracks in my body made me become the person that I am right now. You see me, I know all of this stuff. It's because of my difficult situation that I was in, and I utilized it for the right reasons, for the sakes of growth. And that's what happened to Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Meaning, Judaism says that if there is a difficult situation, it's there to make me grow. Just like when I work out physically, it's there to make me grow. The physical challenges, the people that went through challenges in business grew from those challenges. When a person comes out of his comfort zone, he grows in his speaking ability. When every single challenge that we do is what makes us. If not for those challenges, I wouldn't be able to be me. So the idea here is that it's there to make us grow. And that's exactly what the Talmud says. I'll share with you the Talmud, fascinating Talmud. I'll share it with you now, just to so you should see the idea, because I like that the text is seen from within, not just like a theory that's taught from the outside, but I like it like like a text that's seen from within. So here is 1 second here. So here is the Talmud. Okay, it's a Talmud in Berachot, in the tractate of Berachot, blessings. And says Rava, I'm going to go straight to the English. Rava, and some say Rav Hizda said, I think it says, okay, yeah, some says Rav Hizda says, if a person sees that suffering has befallen on him, first thing he should do is examine his actions. Okay, can you see that text in bold here? Right? Rava at the top. Rava, and some say Rav Hizda said, if a person sees that suffering has befallen, Yisurin sheba'im alav, if you see suffering that's coming on your way, first thing we need to do is examine our actions, right? And I'm going to speak about this idea of reward and punishment in this world, because we don't know why this is happening to us. But then the Talmud continues, and it proves it. Why? As it says, we will search and examine our ways and return to Hashem. Meaning, if something doesn't go my way, I have to say, okay, maybe I need to improve. I'm going to search and investigate my ways. Maybe there's something I'm not doing good enough. That's the first thing. Even though I don't know if that's the reason. I don't know the reason. But if he examines further, if he says, okay, you know what? I've looked into it. I'm doing the best I could. And you find that there's nothing wrong in what you're doing. Listen to what he says. Right? His ways are found no transgression for which that suffering is appropriate. He may attribute his suffering to dereliction in the study of Torah. He should study Torah. Okay? And then the Talmud continues. And if he did attribute his suffering to the study of Torah, meaning he tried to study more as well, he put his time to study more and come more wise in his connection with Hashem as well, and did not find this to be so, he must be confident that these are afflictions of love. As it's stated, for whom Hashem loves, he rebukes, as does a father the son in whom he delights, which is exactly what I'm saying. What do you mean he loves me and therefore he gives me challenges? The idea is that because I have love, because Hashem loves me, he wants me to grow. And that should make me happy. That should actually find me a sense of joy. The reason why things aren't going my way right now is actually because God loves me and he wants me to grow. If it would go against my way, if it would go completely my way, so then I'll just be this spoiled child that gets everything they want, eats whenever they want, gets fed everything, and no effort. You see, when you train a child to ride a bike for the first time, and you look at the father, and you see that every once in a while, the father lets go when the child's not looking. And you look and you say, what a kind of mean parent is that? Ridiculous. Hold on to the bike. Well, you see a child that's walking, and he's trying to walk, and every time he almost takes a step, the father lets go and lets him fall. And you're like, what is going on? What kind of parent is that? The answer is that no, that's the love of the parent. In fact, it shows ultimate love of the parent. The parent loves his child so much and yet is able to let go of the bike, even though he knows or she knows that there's a danger of this bike falling. There's a danger of this child, his own child, hurting himself. And that happens to me once. I was training my kids to ride a bike or training my kids to walk. I remember even training my child to walk. And every once in a while, letting go. And I know that the child's going to hurt. And I'm just like, I have to let him because I want him to learn. And inside, I'm like, that's so cruel of me. I should stop him from falling because I love my child. But yet I still let it go. That shows love. The love is that I'm able to give up on my love for the child, which is and not intellectual, which is to hold on to him, for the sake that my child should be able to walk, for the sake that my child should be able to go on his own, for the sake that my child can grow. And that's how I need to look at this situation as well right now. I need to look at the world that we're in right now, and in all times, that it's there to make me, I'm going to grow from this. And if I do say that, I will grow from it. But I have to look to see how am I growing from it. So that's another aspect. Okay, there is another aspect which we were just talking about, which is reward and punishment. Listen, the question, how can God allow bad to happen? First of all, we have to understand, who says that the person you're thinking of that's bad, that's doing so well, and the person that you're thinking of that's righteous, which is probably yourself, that is doing so badly, how do you know that that person's bad? And how do you know you are righteous? How can we, and it also goes back to the ultimate idea of not being all powerful, all knowing, and all loving. How can I know that me, myself, I can know myself, but how can I know somebody else who I think is bad and is having a great life? How can I know that he is bad? Maybe he's righteous. Maybe she's righteous. Who am I to say that person, because they do certain things that are different to the way I think is right? Well, who says they're bad? Maybe they're doing, for their level of living and for the family that they were brought up in, and for the environment that he was brought up in, or she was brought up, maybe they're the most righteous person in front of God. You don't know that person. So when I see somebody who's bad, who's succeeding, maybe my question is wrong, because who says that person is bad anyway? When I see someone's righteous who's failing, how do I know that that person's righteous? Just because he looks or she looks righteous on the outside? How do I know? Okay, so there's that aspect, but there's also the aspect of saying there is the idea of punishment and reward in this world. Okay, there's something which we call sachar va'onesh, and that is actually the essence of the question of the person. When somebody asks, how can God cause some bad in this world? How can he, meaning what you asking, that there should be a just world. You see, when somebody steals, when a guy like, I don't like to say names, but a guy like Harvey Weinstein, right? Because I don't even believe, I don't know the story. I don't know anything. I don't even know anything. But a guy like Harvey Weinstein is a perfect example, right? He is going through, right? He's going to prison, and he did something terrible many times, or whatever it is. I don't know the story. But he is a person that everyone, and most women especially, who themselves have been through their own difficult situation, would definitely stand up and say that we need to see justice in this world. That kind of person needs to go to prison. Okay? And if we see a murderer running around on the loose and we find him, we would say that person needs to go to prison. Why? And the answer is because we want this world to be a just world. We deep down want justice in this world. We want deeply good people to have good, and we want bad people to stop having bad, meaning I want justice. So my claim is that there should be justice in this world. And according to Judaism, that's how the world works. There's something called sechar ve'onesh. There's reward and punishment for my deeds. If I do something good, I get rewarded. If I do something bad, I get punished. That is the reality of this world. Now, how does reward and punishment work? I don't see the reward immediately. I don't see the repercussions of my bad immediately. Why don't I see it immediately? Because of free will. If I would see every time I do good straight away, and every time I do bad straight away, the punishment of it, I will never choose to do bad. So good and bad is something that we have to choose, but we don't see it. And we have to also understand, though, that there really is reward and punishment. This idea that eventually the goodies of the movie will actually win is a true idea. And the bad people of the movie will actually lose is a true idea. In this world that we live in, eventually, something is going to happen to the bad and something good is going to happen to the good. Okay? And that's an ultimate belief. It's one of the 13 principles of faith that we have to have, that there is such a thing as reward and punishment. There's another aspect that I forgot to mention, and that is maybe it's our fault. You hear that? Maybe it's our fault. And that's another aspect that I even forgot to mention. So there's many angles to this question, but maybe it's our fault, meaning, I'll give you an example. A great rabbi, Rabbi Victor Miller, once went to sit to a shiva house, to a home of mourning for parents that lost a young child. How did they lose the young child? They had a huge window in the child's room upstairs, and there was no fencing around the window. And unfortunately, Rahman al-Islam got, you should never know about these things, the child fell out. And he said that when he went to the mourning house, the shiva house, they were talking about how sad it is and how difficult it is that what happened, but they have faith and they trust Hashem, that he's there for them and he cared for him. And he walked out, he obviously gave him support, but he walked out and he said, you know what? Why are they blaming God? I trust Hashem. Why are you blaming God? Why do you have a huge window for a child's bedroom without a fence on the outside of the window, where the child could just easily get to and climb out of? Why are you blaming God? And that's a question that we need to ask ourselves also sometimes. Did I do my hishtadlut? Did I do my effort? We hold that en somchim ala nes. No one can rely on a miracle. And we have to do our effort. It says, Leman yevarecha Hashem elokecha b'chol asher tishlach et yadecha. God blesses you only after you've done as much effort as you could. So we as humans also believe that we have to put in our effort. We believe in the doctors, we believe in science, we believe in all of that, and we believe in putting our effort. But we also believe that science is limited. We also believe that at a certain point, we are limited. Look at what's going on. One little cell, one little virus is going around the whole world and shut the whole world down. It shows how much advancement we have in this world scientifically, yet how limited we are. So we have to put in all our effort, but we also have to understand that we're limited in our effort, and we have to have faith. So the idea also that needs to be asked as well, this is another point that needs to be asked, is, am I blaming God? Or am I, when I'm asking this question, why are bad things happening? Is it my fault? Or is it God's fault, so to speak? And if it is God's fault, then they've got all the other answers that I've given you. But first I need to also ask myself, was I careless? Somebody doesn't make an effort to get a job. Literally, there's a guy that told me, I'm finding it so hard to find a job. So I said, well, how are you looking for the job? Well, I don't know. I'm not really into it right now. I'm just, I'm sitting at home. I'm just relaxing. I'm not really into it. Well, you're not making the effort. I'm finding it hard to find the job, but I'm not making the effort. So the question I also need to ask myself, and this is a fine line in this question, am I making the right effort here? Am I putting in am I blaming God, or am I doing it myself? Am I doing what's needed? So that's another approach that needs to be dealt with before somebody asks this question. Another point is number 7. I'm going to share you my screen. I'm going to just finish this off quickly, but really leave some time for some thoughts and questions and ideas, because I think that this very last point is key to everything that we're talking about. Because when somebody says, why are people suffering, or why is there suffering in this world? Well, define what suffering is. What is suffering anyway? What is suffering? So that's something that we also need to define. And sometimes we suffer because we don't know why we're here in this world. That's why we're suffering. We're suffering because we have no idea of our purpose in this world, okay? So number 7 I wrote down is Olam Haba, which means the world to come. And the idea of this is, look, a guy like Hitler, okay, in an atheist world, got away with what he did scot-free. Makes no sense. But according to Judaism, there's actually a world to come. Okay? And in the world to come, we have what we call the ultimate place. Okay, so we in this world actually only live for 60, 70, 80 years. Look how short life is, especially with all the challenges that come through our way. There's wars, there's sometimes pandemics like this. So life is short. With all the life that we have and that we think is so easy, it's short. Now, if somebody takes this world as everything, of course you're suffering. If you take the physical world as all of reality, then of course you're suffering. But then you need to ask yourself, why am I any different than, why am I so complicated as a human? Why is me, Jack Millall, thinking so deeply and asking himself, or thinking beyond, why am I not like a simple animal that just grazes on the field, eats its grass, sleeps, gets up, grazes on the field, eats its food, and then once in a while has a risk of living, but doesn't think beyond that? Why am I such a complicated being? And the idea is that we're not just physical. We're not just the physical, we're also a soul. When somebody absorbs that concept, then the idea of suffering changes, okay? That's the idea of olam haba, the next world, that I'm not just in this physical world. If I take this physical world as everything, of course you're suffering. Of course there's suffering, because every time something doesn't go your way, you suffer. I don't know how somebody can live like that. When somebody at the age of 80 finally makes it on a cruise ship and spends $30,000 to make it on a cruise ship, waited so long because his dream was, finally, I'll get my retirement, I'll be able to travel the world and sit on a cruise ship, gets on the cruise ship and finds out that there's a pandemic and there's this crazy disease in the world. How is he going to think of his life? I mean, his whole life was building up to this moment. Finally, he's 80 years old. She's 80 years old. They can't walk so well anymore. They can't even enjoy things so well anymore. Finally, they made it to that moment. They put all their resources and money into this great trip, at least a good chunk of it. That was their dream. They made it on the boat, and now the boat has a risk of death. I mean, there's nothing worse than that. And that's suffering because we have the wrong perspective of what life really is. If I take life in the physical way as the only essence of living, then of course I'm suffering. Every time somebody loses money in the stocks, they suffer. Every time they lose money everything's suffering because it doesn't go my way. Because my goal is comfort. Well, comfort, I've got news for everybody, is not the ultimate goal of life. If I want to be comfortable, I wouldn't have been living in the first place. Because living, by definition, means I'm actually actively being uncomfortable. That shouldn't be depressing. It should be a hope, an idea that, listen, my life isn't just about physicality. It's actually about something much greater. If it's about physicality, I'll end up dating, and I'll give you that example. Dating to date till I'm 50. Then I'm like, oh no, I'm kind of getting old, and this is not working so much anymore. And the dating app's not working anymore. Maybe I'll change my age so I can pretend that I'm 30 and still get what I want, and then continue dating. At a certain point, right? What have I achieved in my world? Okay, so if I have the right perspective of life, where I'm going, what is my purpose in this world? This physical world isn't everything. It's what I create in this world that's much more important. It's my connection to Hashem that's much more important. Then I look at the physical world and I say to myself, you know what? That's not suffering anyway. If I lost a bit of money or a lot of money, my whole goal of working wasn't for the money only anyway. If it was just for money, of course I'd be suffering. So the idea of olam haba, the world to come, is a very big part of answering this question. Of course, somebody who doesn't believe in anything it doesn't believe in God, is an absolute atheist, just believes in the physical world, they are going to be suffering this question much more than I will. They don't have the right to ask that question. They cannot ask that question because God doesn't exist and it randomly came to be. That's how you suffer. But at the end of the day, the reason why that happened is because maybe you don't understand the meaning of what living is. Maybe everything's a suffering for you because you take physical as the only existence in this world. We have to connect to a greater world than just the physical. Look at it. The whole physical world is melting right now. Physicality is melting. There's no more trips. There's no more traveling. There's no more journeys. There's no more, right? Right now, as we're living, all of the physicality is melting apart. All we have left is this real deep understanding that we have spirituality in us. And we need to have that. Okay, so that was number 7. Number 8 is actually Gilgul, which means reincarnation. Reincarnation is actually a Jewish belief, and we know of it. And there's a book called Shar HaGilgulim, written by the Arizal, and many other books, the Zohar. There's actually books which talk about every reincarnation from Adam till the end. All the people that lived throughout the Torah have a reincarnation later on. Like David is the reincarnation of Adam. Adam lived till 930 years. Yes, there are whales that live till 500 years, but that's another discussion. Adam lived till 930. Then 70 years, he was meant to live till 1,000. 70 years of his life he gave to David. So there's an idea of reincarnation. Reincarnation, by the way, we understand that the physically impaired, people that are physically impaired, are very righteous souls, according to Judaism. They were a previous, in fact, most of us today, in fact, all of us today are reincarnations, according to Judaism. The later generations were almost all reincarnations. And the physically impaired, just to give you an example, are called very spiritual souls because they almost completed their mission in the world in their previous life. But now that they came into this existence now, they have to do very few things. And in order to keep them in check, they are put in a world which has much more limitations on their free will. And they only have to do small things to exist, to complete in this world. And therefore, they are like that. That's why actually the greatest of our rabbis, the Chazon Ish, the stories of him that he would stand when physically impaired people would come in to get a blessing from him. He would stand up for them. They would ask him, what are you doing? Why are you standing? He says, this is a very special soul. It's a very holy soul. So when somebody sees something difficult that's going his way, there's also this idea of a Gilgul, a reincarnation. Okay? There's the idea of that the death of the tzaddikim atone. That's another whole idea, but the idea in general is that sometimes, this is a very interesting point, sometimes, and we see this by Miriam and by Aaron, that God takes away the very righteous from this world to help keep the world existing, okay? Which means that it atones for all the bad of the people. So let's say if you have a entire nation that's doing very wrong things and a few righteous people that are doing good things, we take those righteous people for granted. So sometimes God takes them away from this world and allows everybody to have an awakening. Everyone's like, whoa. And what that does is everyone takes on a piece of that person. Everyone says, okay, I want to do what that person used to do. They get inspired. It says, Acharei mot kedoshim. After somebody passes away, do we recognize how holy they were? When somebody leaves the world, we hear their story. How many people do we know about after they died? We hear about their greatness and we heard about all the good things that they did, all the charity they did. And that has a huge impact on the world. Okay, so there's an idea that the death of the righteous can atone. There's many more explanations. I wrote a list. You know, also the idea of Olam Haba. This is the Chafetz Chaim, one of the greatest scholars of a past generation, said he once walked into a mourning home and they had a child that passed away. And they said to him, Rabbi, how can it be? How can this be? So he gave an example, a fascinating example. He said, if let's say we went on a bus together, went on a bus and you get a day pass, you pay $5, you get a day pass on the bus. You can go as long as you want on the bus and you can go on as many buses as you want. After sitting on the bus for 2 minutes, a new person walks in and 2 stops later, he gets off. Before he gets off, you say to him, listen, dude, what are you doing? You paid $5. You paid the same money as me. Why are you getting off the bus? Stay on. You paid $5. I paid $5. Let's just stay on the bus. Make the most out of our money. For $5, you can go around the whole of LA. Why don't you stay on the bus? At least go all the way around LA and then come back to the same spot. What are you getting off the bus for? And the guy looks at him and says, what are you talking about? This is my stop. This is where my home is. This is where I need to go. This is my stop. And that was his response to this family, which is like, in Judaism, based on this Olam Haba perspective, we understand that there's not just this world. And when somebody passes away, that's their bus stop. There's no point of them living any longer in this world. You know, somebody recently sent me a video of a lady, a very old, funny lady. She reached 102 or something like this. And they did a happy birthday for her. And she looks at everybody and she says, well, I hope this is my last. And she blows out the candles. And it's a really funny video. It got blasted everywhere. And everyone's, I saw that someone sent it to me. So I was thinking to myself, I mean, she's a funny woman, you know, but she was meaning what she was saying. She really meant what she was saying. And the idea is that no matter how good of a life we live, at the end of the day, it's really limited. You know, people are talking about older people as if they're just worthless to us. You know, oh, natural selection. Some people, most people are actually staying home and they can. But a lot of young people are saying, you know, this is how the world works. This is how the world works. You know, once in a while, the older, the fittest have to survive. Yeah, that's how the world works when you're young. But when you only question, right, the threat of life when it threatens you. That's when people question the threat of life. If it threatens somebody else, then I have good reasons. I'm fine. So, you know, natural selection, it's only threatening them. Me, I'm fine. I'll be good. But them, whatever. You can't question life only when it threatens you. Meaning, you can't be worried about life only when it threatens you. That's a very self-centered kind of thought. Only if it threatens, you know, the 1918 Spanish flu, that threatened the young only. Very strange, but it only threatened the young. It would be ridiculous for the older to say, well, we don't need the young, you know, we can always make more young and let them just be. I mean, that's not the way we're meant to work. So here's the right way to think based on what I told you. And remember, the atheist cannot ask any of these questions. The religious person has to ask this question. The atheist will ask every other question besides for this one question. The religious person will have every other question answered, but this one question he will have to face. And these are some of the answers that I have. So number 10 is the right way to think. The right way to think is that God wants this to happen. Who is God? He's all-loving, he's infinite and all-powerful. Right? So right now in this situation, there's the pandemic, God wants this to happen. Number 2, Hashem does this for the good. How do I know? Because he is all-loving and all-powerful and he's infinite. And therefore, he knows everything. I only know this moment. Now, I believe that this moment that I'm in is also for the good. This current pandemic is also for the good. I just don't see it, but I believe it. And the final moment is when I actually say, thank you, Hashem, for that challenge that I went through. When I go through and look back and I say, thank you, thank you, thank you. And that's what we hope to do. Okay? The only way that you can look back at this situation and say, thank you, this is the only way that we can look back and say thank you, is if during this time I utilize this moment, this ability that I have for as much as I can. Don't waste this opportunity for my greatness. I see Ben Molad over here. So for Ben, his opportunity right now is to come great as a nurse. He's a nurse. He's a hero right here. We should all give it up to Ben right here for his hard work and his devotion to all of humanity. We love you, Ben.
Thank you, Rabbi. Means a lot. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Love you.
But that's what we need to do. So every single person, he's a nurse. So obviously it's his opportunity right now to grow. But every single person, whatever situation you're in, has to come out of this and say, thank you, Hashem, for what I went through. Anyone got some questions, thoughts, comments? We are kind of limited on time because Shira's going into her Tehillim group, which she does as well. What time is it right now? 9:30. I have it on the screen. Okay, so any thoughts, questions, ideas before we finish off?
I have a question.
Yes.
You were talking a little bit about how God does things for a reason and has a plan. Are we in life supposed to put things together and find out what the reason was? Or why things are good?
That's a very good question. What we're meant to do is look at the situation and ask ourselves, what am I lacking? We can never know what God is doing, but like that Talmud says, there's two things we need to do. One is say to ourselves, what am I lacking as a person? Am I not good enough in certain ways? Because there is an idea of reward and punishment. So I need to say to myself first, am I not good enough? What am I not good enough at? And if I say to myself, you know what? I've been really growing this past year. I've been becoming a much better person. So it's not that. Okay? Then I need to say it's for my growth. And from that perspective, I can never know what it is, but from that perspective, what I mean by that is I need to look at my situation and say, okay, it's for my growth, and my job is to make sure I see the good in this situation. Because if I don't look for the good, then I won't find it. So the answer to your question is, one, I need to rethink and reevaluate, am I doing the right things in my life? Am I good in this world? Am I doing right or wrong in this world? And second is, look all the time and say, how can I utilize this situation for my growth? Okay, so I need to actually take this opportunity and use it and realize that it's God who loves me. He's giving me this challenge so I can grow. Anyone else?
Thank you.
For sure. Thoughts, ideas, comments? Do we have someone on the chat here? Amen. Okay. Gabe, thank you. I wonder when you wrote that. That's the question. Oh, maybe no.
It was like a minute ago.
Ah, he's the man. You guys are all awesome. I love you all. I miss you. Shira misses you. It looks like Batsheva misses you too. Isn't she beautiful? I'm telling you, I'm getting to know my kids. It's amazing. So it just shows that if I don't even know my own children properly, how much more so do I not know other people? And I sometimes judge them. If I don't even know my own children properly, because now I'm spending real time with them, and these are my own children, how much more so do I not know other people? And I sometimes, do you get what I'm saying? I don't know anything about anyone. It's insane. So we should never judge anyone. Okay, but that's really the idea. The idea is that there is a reason for everything. If you want, I can share with you this paper, this Google Keep that I made. And then you can have it as a reference always to remind you that everything is for a reason, and it's all for the good. Even though I don't know, whenever I lose something, it is for the good. I can't ask that question because I'm human, and God is infinite, all loving, all powerful. And he knows the ultimate long run of this situation that I'm going in. And that's what makes me human. What makes me human is to be able to choose in this difficult situation to see the good of it. That's my goal. That's my aim. And whatever it is, in every aspect of life, whether it's work, dating, or anything else? We have, amen always, and thank you, Hashem. Thank you, Shira. Shira, any thoughts, ideas you want to throw in there? People want to hear your voice, I think.
Well, here's my voice. I mean, no, it was amazing. You really covered everything.
Rabbi,
Thank you.
if you want me to share
Dan.
something quick, I can.
Sure.
Just because I feel like you're really wanting someone to say something. So I just feel like when I started adopting that approach, however long ago, to life, it actually does. And whether it's Eitan and I talk about a lot, like, okay, is this because Judaism is right and God exists, or is this because this would happen anyways because it's a good system and it works, right? Which I know is Torah Chaim or Torah Emet, but like, it's interesting. So when I started thinking like that, whenever something bad would happen, it forces you to say, okay, why is this happening? And if everything's for the good, then there must be something good I can take out of this. And ordinarily, like back in, I don't know, a few years ago, before I adopted that approach, I'd just be upset about it and move on. But it really forces you to think, okay, could there be an opportunity here? Is there a way to look at this that I'm not looking at? Did this open up a door that I wouldn't otherwise have looked for? And almost every time, like literally, honestly, like I can't think of a time where that wasn't true. There is a door that's opened. You just weren't thinking to look for it because you didn't have this mentality that it must be for the good. So we actually, in our natural lives, miss out on a lot of really, really great things that can occur just because we're not looking for them, and this can solve that.
Beautiful. Thank you.
But I'm not a rabbi and I don't really know anything, but Rabbi Jack wanted someone to talk, so I did.
No, that was brilliant.
That was great.